So our move to a renewable heavy portfolio has been driven mostly by cost and by policy risk mitigation. We've increased our renewable member resource options, but we do have a challenging environment for development. And again, this is a benefit of the early action that we've taken, is that the wind that we've contracted for that's already online is not facing some of the permitting and development challenges that some of our later wind is. And we see this happening, and it's a very challenging situation. It's a challenging policy situation from a permitting perspective, being able to permit new wind resources, getting their certificates of need from the Public Utilities Commission, getting the transmission routes that these resources need to deliver energy to the system approved, and then even from a commodities perspective. The costs of building new wind, building new solar, are extraordinarily high today, and those are being driven by supply chain challenges, inflationary pressures. I just mentioned we were seeing wind contracting in the low 20s in 2020-21. We just had some meetings last week with wind developers that are offering wind at $50 a megawatt hour. Right, so we've seen more than double the cost of renewable energy in the last 3 years. And we're now returning to pricing levels that we saw when the original Next Generation Energy Act was passed in Minnesota in 2008. We were contracting wind in the $40, $50 range then. We saw a huge change in the industry to provide lower cost renewables. Now that's completely reversed. And we're seeing wind at $50, solar at $70. Luckily, we don't have to make those investment decisions today because we've already done those things. We just filed an integrated resource plan with the Public Utilities Commission about a month ago that indicates our future path. In a way, having a boring resource plan is a good thing because we don't have anything exciting that we have to do in the next 5 or 10 years because we've already done it. All right, so our next resource that we had coming to the portfolio is a capacity resource. In this case, it was modeled as a storage asset. That doesn't mean that's what we're going to do, but the model that we used represented this capacity need as storage. So that's a 200 megawatt storage or capacity need in 2020. 2031, we have another capacity need represented in this case by solar, and then 2032, some energy that we need. And that energy is predominantly required as that rainbow contract rolls off and as our energy and demand forecasts increase over time. But there's a huge difference, and we hear people talk about the carbon-free standard in Minnesota, and even, as I've said today, we're on a path to compliance today. Our portfolio today should comply with the 2030 and 2035 milestones of the standard as it is today, with no additional action. But there's a difference between planning to comply and actually complying. And those differences are the challenges that we face in bringing these resources to the system. So working with Greater Minnesota, working through challenges in permitting, where we need these resources and when we need them is critical to actually bring them online to comply with the standards that we have to face. We have to have some really tough conversations. We've talked with regulators, we've talked with policymakers, with legislators, with folks in outstate Minnesota, local government officials, as we try and bring these resources on. These partnerships are really important, and Pretty talked about the need for permitting for transmission. We need Greater Minnesota, we need North Dakota, we need South Dakota, we need Iowa to be able to make this work, right? So the conversations that we have need to be productive, and they have been to this point, but there's still work to do. But we feel like we're in a good position. Our portfolio planning has been proactive. It's been driven by economics and reliability.